Hello, and welcome to this tutorial on identifying Indigenous search terms brought to you by the UBC Library. The Using Databases tutorial taught you how to search, but deciding which words you want to use can be challenging. Let's look at search terms related to Aboriginal topics and explore a few strategies for finding additional terms. There are many factors that make finding relevant articles and research about communities' perspectives on Aboriginal topics more complex than other types of research. Many of these factors relate to the history of marginalization of Indigenous peoples, to the cultural diversity of Aboriginal nations in BC and Canada, and the interdisciplinary nature of research on Aboriginal topics. Interesting, relevant, and challenging research for your topic might be found in unexpected places. Many people focus on the question of what words to use when talking or writing about Aboriginal topics. This is a really important question, but a very different question from what words to use to search for information. When you are searching for information in articles, think more intentionally about who's writing the articles you are looking for. Imagine that you aren't looking for an article to read, but rather that you are at a conference and looking for a new conversation to join. When you join a conversation with people you don't know, if their background is very different from yours, it's more likely that they will be using different words and have different experiences to share with you. Using more search terms can give you more interesting choices for articles to read. Let's explore our topic together and pay attention to the way we choose search terms, ensuring these choices are more intentional and more effective. Let's consider searching for information about different approaches used by schools to promote Aboriginal families' participation in classes and school activities. Take a minute. Write down the search terms that you would use. Maybe group the similar words together. Think about who would write about the topic. Also, think about specific authors or individuals that might write about this. Consider pausing the video. How about the kinds of people who might write about it? Teachers, Aboriginal education specialists, Aboriginal parents? Who else? Does that change your search terms you might use? What kinds of participation do you expect? Helping children with their homework, members of parents' advisory councils or similar groups, grandparents coming to talk to their children's classes, volunteering for fundraisers, or to drive for field trips? Does thinking about the question change your search terms? Try to separate the key concepts in your topic. Some of the words like example might not be a good search term, but consider it for a minute anyway. Sometimes it is useful to use ordinary terms like example. Often there are related terms that might work better, such as case studies. Let's focus on the three main concepts in this topic and consider some starting search terms for each concept. For the concept, participation in schools, you might start searching an interdisciplinary database such as Academic Search Complete, or you might start searching in a database that focuses on education, like ERIC or Education Source. Using the term education in ERIC won't be very helpful, but in Academic Search Complete, it may help cut down on irrelevant articles that have different meanings from your search terms, such as those articles about schools of thought instead of about public schools. In ERIC, focusing on a specific level of education, such as elementary, might be helpful. Aboriginality is more than ethnicity. Terms can sometimes be used interchangeably. Sometimes legal, political, or other meanings are critical. There are regional and other differences in how these terms are used. However, you will need to search for terms that you don't use in your writing in order to find some really good resources. You may need to use American terms to find Canadian articles in many of the databases. Searching for specific Aboriginal nations or groups is a useful and sometimes necessary approach. When searching for a term like family, think outside the box. Don't limit yourself to search terms that reflect only a nuclear family. Terminology relating to Indigenous identity, sovereignty, and political organization is complex. Use the resources on the Aboriginal Studies Research Guide to become familiar with the complexity and issues. Don't expect internet searches and article databases to use these terms the same way you do. Use a variety of terms, including the ones you don't like, for a better chance of finding really interesting articles. The Books and Media and Articles tabs on the Aboriginal Studies Research Guide have suggested search terms and strategies. If you need help using these guides, please watch the Using Research Guides tutorial. Let's try a search. We have a few alternative terms for Aboriginality in the first row, 2 terms related to participation in the next row, another 2 related to schools, and another 2 related to families, and 1 related to geography, Canada. These may not be the best search terms, but they will be a good place for us to get started. Note the asterisk or wildcard at the end of several words. If you aren't familiar with this, watch the Using Databases tutorial. Note that there are 113 articles in ERIC that are described with our search terms. Our search terms are highlighted in yellow. We can see other great search terms, ones that we didn't use yet, in the descriptors. When we click into an article, we notice that neither the term Aboriginal or First Nations shows up in the description. Note that the database is adding terms to the description that the author probably didn't use in the article. Notice that some of the search terms from the earlier slides show up in the description, as well as some terms we didn't look at before, such as community and unwelcoming. Feel free to browse through these terms in order to build a stronger search. Now that you have search terms, create a research plan. You want to clearly define your question, come up with multiple search terms, choose appropriate databases, and then start finding articles and journals. If you need additional assistance identifying research terms, please feel free to contact a UBC librarian. Additionally, you can contact the online reference service Askaway.